cameras until we were ready to rock. Live for a week, then dehydrate with a 7-head instead. It was depicted as flipped, split the wick slit.
We have got to try to men are in the village. Tall men, healthy, but not like the last men who planted wooden stakes or tied orange ribbons to bushes in the nearby fields. Not white men. Their skin was like ours, a bit. Their rubber suits pipe lightning down their arms, and legs and chests shine brighter than moons. They are here to see Hatim. There, Nairobi points to the hut that shakes in the barely there breeze. It sheds sticks and coarse grass from its roots. This is where he is. Nairobi, as ever, willing to sate the curiosity of outsiders, guides them down the narrow pathway connecting our houses. Men are in the village. Tall men, healthy but not like the last men who planted wooden stakes or tied orange ribbons to bushes in the nearby fields. Not white men. Their skin was like ours a bit. Their rubber suits pipe lightning down their arms and legs, and their chests shine brighter than moons. They are here to see Hatim. There. Nairobi points to the hut that shakes in the barely there breeze, that sheds sticks and coarse grass from its roof. This is where he is. Nairobi, as ever, willing to sate the curiosity of outsiders, guides them down the narrow pathway connecting our houses. The men stomp past those of us aroused from slumber, past sick men lying without mercy on the dusty earth floor, past women who have huddled several small children as close to their breasts as they can, scolding any who dare to venture into the path to touch the glowing instruments of these men. Nairobi stops 10 feet from the door of the small hut. Even he, the crier, pauses. The men look back at him for a second, then at each other, until the one in front nods, signaling all three to continue moving. We saw their vessel erupt out of the sky, just appear in the stillness of the night. Nazir and I, we sat by the river and listened to wildcats hissing and jostling on the other side, to things swimming underneath the water, and imagined a strange world calling to us. We imagined that the world under the river surface was vast, filled with creeping and crawling things, with scaly demons whose bites were worse than a piranha's, that we were spawned from the souls of the dead bodies we sometimes saw float down from the nearby cities. Until the ship announced itself with a roar, we had not thought of anything more terrifying, more loud. It fell into the atmosphere, hovered over the ground. The air got thick and felt wet. My skin felt like it was being stung by mosquitoes and ticks as the machine hummed and whirred. We ran back as fast as we could, yelled at the elders, and when they would not believe us, we hid under our mats and clutched sticks and waited. The flash lights They flashlights into the hut, checking machines and pushing buttons on their arms. When the third one pulls out his gun, a collective moan roars all throughout the village. These men who look like us, they've come to murder us all. The elders tell of such things when evil men come and burn down homes and kill all of the men, leaving the survivors to long walks through the jungle for 100 days, some dying along the way. And then the man with the gun lifts a finger to his lips as the other two went in. Was this happening? And why our village? We were of no consequence to the rebels, my father had told me, because we had nothing they wanted, no resources we could be forced to mine or leave our land for. And I believed him until the strange men started showing up and so many of us started disappearing. The men rushed from the hut, barking. One of them is carrying Hatim, who is limp and barely dressed and foaming at the mouth. Their boots move so quickly that dust billows into clouds. I cannot make out what they are saying, but they are frantic. Their voices are mechanical and wiry and muffled by the strange devices emanating out of their ears, eyes, mouths. They run until they are far off into the distant fields by the river, until we can no longer follow the trace of the glow of their suits, until all the light that's left is from the stars in the sky. We strain to see where they have disappeared over the horizon, nothing. Then a bright white explosion peels outward from the direction of the river, accompanied by a thundering that knocks the weaker of us to the ground, including the hut that housed Hatim, until he was taken by the strange men. The gravity around us increases and presses into us as something shoots out over our heads. The ship! When it passes seconds later, we find pieces of the hut's thatched roof scattered for yards. Hatim had grown sicker and sicker and spent his days in that hut. Some of us envied him that he did not have to tend to the goats or hunt wild boar or carry crumbling clay pots of dirty water in the radiant sun. Only Genji, the man who can make sweet liquids from plants that can pass through a body and kick out that body's demons, was allowed to enter. I am sorry, he told Hatim's mother after a month of trying to care for him. There's nothing I can do. The ancestors are all that's with him now. Hatim's mother sank to her knees, cradled her son in her arms, sobbing violently. As Nasir and his brother tore her away, she ran off into the forest, never to be seen again. I am remembering this when Nasir puts his hand on my shoulder. I am reminded that I am in the village, that tomorrow I will take the goats far up north to pasture, and that I will carry my longest stick in case a tiger shows himself, starved and bold and insistent on a feast. I miss his wiry fingers on my cold flesh. I miss calling out to him from the bathroom with soap in my eyes. I miss sitting on the couch reading bad romance novels while he made appliances dance to his will, the kitchen echoing a determined clang and rattle, wondrous alien scents whisking out to greet my nose. I miss even the tiny ridges of his forehead that canyoned up every time that he got nervous or angry. And he was often angry, bruised, broken up in some way. He'd be on the fire escape landing, tapping on my window with bloody knuckles, gasping. What the hell, Hatim? I'd scream. He'd put a long finger to his lips and motioned to open the window. I'd let him in and in a quiet rasp again, what the hell, Hatim? A ubiquitous they were always after him. Goons in glowing red costumes or thugs carrying scepters crafted from bones of rare sea life and imbued with black magic, anti-spies in gray suits with machine gun boots, weaponized wood nymphs with telekinetic mollusks for their brains. I never saw any of them. I only heard glimpses of stories, only saw strange lacerations and wounds cut into his body in ways I didn't know the human body could be cut. I only saw the artifacts and memorabilia, usually some small exploding thing, something I'd have to pry out of his elbow with a hot pair of scissors. No, we can't go to the hospital. They will find me there. My apartment is too cold, too small, poorly ventilated. But sometimes, even on the most wintry nights, I keep the window open in my room and just pile on the blankets, the ones my aunts have given me over the past few Christmases, huddled in front of an old space heater. I leave the window open so that the dust from the heater can circulate and rise out. I also leave it open for him. Tonight, I hope he returns. The cold gets unbearable. So I go into the living room and watch Jay Leno squeak out tired anecdotes at some beauty-obsessed starlet and try, to no avail, to stay awake. I think that through the haze of a dream, I can see his link emerging in front of me. He is all arms and legs, springy and powerful. His voice is reverberating in heavenly tones, and it sounds like bells on falling concrete. My name. I'm dreaming that I can hear him, that he's surrounded by floating clouds and cosmic rainbows until I feel something hot grip my arm. With a start, I'm up. He is standing before me. I've come for you. My arm! His grip is inescapable. The more I try to pry myself away, the more taut his grasp becomes. It's burning, Hatem. I'm sorry. Slowly, he lets me go. Hatem looks at his hands wide-eyed, turning them over in shock. There's a strange glow to him, a crisp orange light that I've never seen before. I feel guilty for having cursed and reach out to stretch and rest myself out of sleep. I should not have come, he exclaims, backing away. When he starts towards the window, I'm suddenly panicked. I may lose him again to coyness. I reach out for him. His skin is taut and wood-like. I notice finally that he's not wearing a shirt, just the leather pants he begged me to buy for him at the goth store in Fishtown. No shoes, nothing. His hair is spiky and his eyes flash in a swirling aura-like array of color. I'm afraid, but I'm tethered to him, lost in his mystery. I should not have come. I'm sorry. He is outlined by a glow, growing light hovering just beyond the invisible barrier of the window. His eyes slowly dim. Now he is more normal than I have ever seen him, standing there looking at his hands, whispering to himself, I should not have come. As the light increases, a large ship appears in the alleyway, just hovering there at my apartment window. There's a deep hum that I can feel in my stomach that seems to roll through the building's walls. It's barely audible. I simply feel it, then nothing. Hatem puts a flared fingertip to his lips that in the darkness of my apartment looks like a pixie flitting in space. My ears pop, glass shatters, raining down into the room. Shards fall onto our bodies, tearing through our flesh, mostly just bouncing off of his, and I fall to my knees in agony. Dark-clad mercenaries on wires rip through every window, smash down my apartment door, kick over my furniture, all while screaming an eerie robotic timbre. Without warning, I'm wrapped in one of my aunt's blankets and pushed to the floor. Through a sliver, I can see boots stomp by or bodies fall to the floor. I can hear things breaking and blowing up, all in a cacophony like a rave in a casino beset with fireworks. And there's a 2-second silence, and suddenly the ground beneath me disappears. I can't see anything as the blanket has grown tighter around my body. Is someone carrying me? Hatem? I try to call out to him, but I grow faint. There's nothing there, just the vastness of the current around me that increases exponentially as I drop. It feels like I've been drugged. I shut my eyes and Hatem's blurry visage ricochets in my head again until it all dissolves into blackness. When I awake, it's broad daylight, and I'm on a beach. A seagull has been poking at my dried out lips. It stands before me with a piece of my skin in its mouth. I am barely able to move. So I let him have his lunch in peace in the high, beaming warmth of the sun. The beach stretches far, but not that wide. A steep, craggy hill is only a few yards behind me. I crawl towards it and sit against the rocks, waiting for the relentless sun to smash into the abyss of the sea. I am Hatim Mazambo. I am the pilot of this ship. I am the everlight being of Earth. I am the star sparkle of the universe, the lamp of God. Traversing the ghost strewn path of the cosmos, I am the lightning avatar, the creeping hot death of heat, the burning light of the cold of Pluto, surrounded in the Gate Nebula. I came to you as Horus. I came to you as Akhenaten. I came to you as Vishnu. I came to you in parabolic visions and far-flung tales of the mystics. And then I came to you with my arms open, my eyes blind, with my heart rendered into fragments as big and wide as heaven itself. I gave you the sweet nectar of the rain, the cooling breeze, the Amazon. Those great gray ships, those that sit aloft, clouds that hover amongst the innermost regions of your dreamscape, bearing down on nightmares and shifting those dark, ominous clouds into the gutters of all reality, whose legions are armed and amassing, poised and sharp-willed and righteous and bearing the artillery of love, whose love is laser and light. The master of this, I am the pilot of the ship. The sword and the pen, I am why men fight wars, why love tears apart kings, and why princes die violently or vainly in wanton massacre. I am why there are dugout pits filled with dead bodies after the revolution. I am why there are landfills and choking pelicans stricken with mutating disease or choking on their own bile or strangled by plastic six-pack lids. I am why there are roses growing on West Philadelphia sidewalks, why these roses' thorns push through dried cement, still flower, are trampled on and fed exhaust and hate, yet I am why this rose still rises. I am the Ghost King. I am the nebula. I am the abandoned parking lot littered with mattresses and glass. I am that great, seeking, raging God King Verdachi. When they came for you in black masks with their batons held high, when they knocked on your door at midnight and called out for your sons, for your souls, I and I alone, I whose lonesome army descended upon them, who blew up buildings for you, who poisoned their water, who sent locusts, who burned bushes, I who built the mountains, who found your lover cold and naked and who fed and clothed them, who sent the butterflies. I'd paint Rothkos on the side of a train when you were sleeping. And I am the pilot of this great ship. I am a rising star. Buddha, Texaco, America, Cosmic, Nova, Nuclear, Unicorn, Microsoft, Pixel, Gravity. I am rising. I am the star. Hey everyone. Welcome. Yeah, welcome to the Ambitron. What's up? Just a really quick, brief rundown of what's happening right now. The Ambitron is a moment in time. It's a fleeting sight, a flash in your eye. It's sound and mind. It's freedom, eco, war, all combined into glorious Afrotopian vision. This is the Ambitron. Today, we are going to have Alex Jennings, author of Here I Come and Other Stories, New Orleans' very own Afrofuturist wordsmith. We're also going to have Kara Mshinda, awesome collagist, abstract artist, contributing to ideas of otherness in her art. She teaches at Temple, where she marries the ideas of race and identity with art praxis. And sounds will be provided by Savon DePaul, a genius beatmaker, rapper, writer, member of the Bad Apple Commune, and whose new album Acid Rain 2 is basically ripping through my Spotify and my Bandcamp playlist. So, with that said, I'm going to a little taste. Bear with us. You know how Zoom is. It's a little wonky. I hate you, Zoom, so much. Bear with us, folks. Almost there. You just have to pretend to be annoyed for a little longer. Man, this really is annoying. Alex Jennings, everyone.
Okay, folks, can you see me and hear me? I am going to read a little bit from my forthcoming novel. So a little bit of background. This is an urban fantasy set mostly in a sort of pocket universe at right angles to conventional reality. And I'm going to read from chapter 7, chapter 8, sorry, which is entitled Or Die Trying. And at this point in the story, my main character, Perry Graves, has gone on a quest to receive a weapon that will aid him in the fight against the evil ghost Koizumi Yakumo. But he doesn't know what he's looking for. Perry wasn't sure how long he'd been climbing. The daylight seemed a little different now, or was he imagining it? That deep blue sound still rang everywhere, but the pitch of it had changed a little. Perry wondered if it was because of the altitude. He hadn't yet summoned the courage to look over the drop-off to his left. He wasn't particularly afraid of heights, but he'd read about the imp of the perverse, and the idea of his body urging him to plunge to his death made him think twice about taking a look. These steps, though, ugh. Perry had a stitch in his side and his legs ached something fierce. He felt a weary sort of relief as he came to another stone landing. This was maybe the 6th he'd seen so far, and by his reckoning, the landings were 100 or so yards apart. But this one was different from the others in that it included a marble bench to each side, one tucked up against the mountain and the other near the edge of the cliff, about 8 feet apart. They looked as if they'd been carved from the living rock rather than fashioned and set there. The legs went straight down into the stone below. Perry took a seat on the mountainside bench. Now he felt a tingle in his legs, almost as if they wanted to twitch. He wished he'd put on shorts instead of jeans wherever he'd come from. Why couldn't he remember where his journey had begun? He frowned as he tried to recall the faces of his family. He saw them clearly enough in his mind's eye, but he couldn't remember their names. The forgetfulness didn't alarm him, and he thought that must be a function of the quest, because he felt sure he was on a quest, though for what he had no idea. Someone must have told him at some point that either he hadn't listened or the quest had dulled that memory too. Maybe, Dinkin said as she plopped down the stairs towards him. But it could be you never knew, and finding out is part of the mission. Now Perry saw why her feet were making those popping moves. Dinkin seemed to be half goat now, her hair dark and shaggy. Her face was mostly human, though covered in fur. It had no snout, and instead of the tall, blunt goat's teeth Perry was used to, those seemed human as well. What? She asked. Then she noticed Perry staring. Too weird? Yeah, Perry said. Wait, no, can you be either more goat or more human? Kid, I don't have any clothes up here. Are you just trying to get me naked? Perry's face heated. What? No. Dinkin laughed. I'm just joshing. But the me at the bottom of the hill told you you gotta get to the inn before low tide. Otherwise, this whole island goes under and you'll have to swim and climb all the way again. That doesn't... But Perry bit off the protest as the island looked. Perry's mind went bright with panic. He clenched his eyes shut. It felt as if the island slipped downward at least 100 feet before it was stable again a couple minutes later. Perry opened his eyes to find that Dinkin now stood on his feet. Shaggy curly hair covered her body almost completely. Only her hands, feet, and face were bare. Is this any better? She asked. If you ask me, I look like Bigfoot. What's happening? Oh, you mean with the tide? Dinkin said. I'll explain. You gotta keep climbing with me. Low tide is no joke. Perry couldn't think what else to do, so he joined Dinkin walking. She didn't smell like a goat, he realized now. She smelled good. There was something floral and feminine about her scent, but it was a little musky too. But the musk was more human than animal. Will you tell me who you are? Perry asked. Well, that part is kind of hard to explain. I used to be a lot of people. I used to be a god. I am still, but I used to be too. Which god? Perry asked. Tanit, Dinkin said, of the Phoenicians. Ever heard of me? Sorry, no, Perry said, embarrassed. I know the Phoenicians, though, from the Bible and Hannibal and the elephants. Hannibal, Dinkins said. It sounded wistful. Now there's a name I haven't heard in ages. Okay, but are you really going to tell me what this place is? Last time I asked, you just laughed at me and goofed around. God, humans are so strange. Your lives are so short that you're always in a hurry, but you're also so slow. I feel like you want me to ask what you mean, but I want to know what this place is first. Okay, Dinkins said. Well, you probably have the Canary Islands on your Earth too, or you think you do anyway, and they're just islands. You think? Harry stopped short. That sounded like another trick. They're islands, he said, in the Mediterranean. Okay, well, these are the Canaries on this world and several others, except here they're not really islands. What are they? They're the eggs of the world serpent. She left them here and forgot about them, and so they're just floating in this part of the sea. Most of the time, the eggs are about 2/3 out of the water, and people live and work on them and do their thing, like run an inn or an airport or whatever. There's an airport? Lincoln pointed off to the left, and without thinking, Perry followed the gesture. The water was heartbreakingly blue, as he knew it would be since he still heard the color clearly. A ways in the distance, Perry saw what had to be an airport sitting beneath the waves. He saw its control tower, its runways, and its main terminal, even an empty parking lot, airplane hangars, runways. In size, it was midway between Armstrong International and Lakeside. Perry stopped walking and stared. Oh, no, you don't, Dinkins said. Before Perry knew what was happening, he picked him up and slung his body over her shoulders. It seemed bigger and broader than they had before. Dinkin broke into a run, and her feet must have changed back into hooves, as Perry heard them striking loud and fast against the stone. The stairwell receded behind them, snaking down and winding off to the left, where Perry couldn't see it anymore. From up here, the beach was lost in him as well. For a moment, he saw his situation very clearly. He was impossibly far from home, from everything and everyone he knew, being carried up a set of stone steps carved into what sounded like a colossal dragon head by an ancient goddess Opal. If she was strong enough to carry him this quickly, what was stopping her from just pitching him out to sea? Well, that's just insulting, Dinkins said. Now Perry realized she'd listened in on his very thoughts. Dinkins slowed down and lifted Perry off her back to set him on her feet. They stood on a grassy expanse bisected by a marble pathway, leading up another short flight of stone stairs, a sprawling villa surrounded by a covered porch. You think I'm a liar? Dinkins, or was it Emmett, asked. Why would something as old as me, with all my power and majesty, bother fibbing to a little old human who will be dead in like 40 or 50 years? 70, Perry said. He lived to be 70 years old, give or take. That's what I said, Dinkins said flatly. 70 years is like 40 or 50 years in that it is basically no time at all. Count yourself lucky you're not a regular human. I am, though. You're what? A regular human, Perry said. I'm smart, I guess, but there's nothing special about me. Perry, Dinkins said, exasperated. Perilous Antoine Graves. I got news for you. Perry scowled. Oh, come on. You come on, she said. Look. She pointed back the way they'd come. Perry hadn't realized that when they completed their stair climb, they'd crossed a suspension bridge. It must have happened too fast, but he could see that the last landing on the stairwell. Above it, the mountain jutted even farther up, and a cloud bank ringed its summit, maybe another 100 yards above where Perry stood. As Perry watched, the mountain rumbled, almost as if it had indigestion. The sound built and built until the air was full of it, and Perry wouldn't have been able to make himself heard above it, even screaming at the top of his lungs. Abruptly, the mountain sank, slowly at first, then faster and faster. In no more than 5 minutes, and it descended into the sea. Dimly, Perry could still see it down there, resting beneath the waves. His stomach turned over as he realized that without Dinkin's help, he'd never have made it here before the mountain went down. He turned back to her, his mouth hanging open. He was fully human again now. Well, not human. She seemed built to a larger scale. Her physique still seemed compact, if a little skinny, but she was roughly 8 feet tall. Her fur had gone, or at least it seemed like it might have, and she wore a circlet of flame around her head. Her tunic, Harry wasn't sure it was made of fabric, the way it shone and billowed in the wind, stretched down to her hips, where she wore what Perry thought at first must be a layered skirt, until he realized it was actually broad-legged pants. Harry, she said, her voice brimmed with kindness, with patience. Some things aren't worth holding on to. Why do you wish so fervently to be normal? I don't know. Do you think Peaches could love a normal boy? Harry couldn't answer. He couldn't say the word. He bowed his head and pressed his left fist against his forehead, struggling. Fat tears rolled down his face. Hey, hey now. Harry opened his eyes to find that Dinkin had become human again. Her small right hand rested lightly on his shoulder. We can't just give you things, do you understand? You have to give me something. What? Perry asked. He couldn't tell whether he was still crying. What do you want? Are you a boy who keeps his word? Yes, Perry said. Then I want you to promise me that you'll protect my daughter with your life, no matter what. Who's your daughter? Perry asked. Promise. I promise. Repeat after me. By the stars and by the sea, by the stars and by the sea, by gods of earth and moon and spangled sky, by gods of earth and moon and spangled sky, by fire and blood and the cutting path. This is my oath to give my last from every weapon from here to hell to protect my love, to protect Peaches, Perry said. Peaches Lavelle. Good, Dinkins said. Thank you. Perry opened his eyes. You're wrong about me, Perry said. I'm a human boy. Peaches is the strongest girl who ever lived. How can I protect her? Dinkins shrugged. Maybe you won't have to. You don't believe that, Perry said. Then I guess you'd better figure it out. Now come. Together they ascended the steps and crossed the veranda to the villa's circular wooden front door. Dinkin gestured with her chin and Perry knocked. A round-faced woman in a red and gold headscarf answered the door. Her eyes widened and her mouth fell open as she saw Dinkin standing there. She dropped to her knees and touched the marble floor with her forehead. A thrill of apprehension passed through Perry. Dinkin had revealed herself as a goddess. Was Perry being rude by standing in her presence? Oh, stop it, Dinkin said, exasperated. The woman answered in what must have been Arabic. Perry didn't understand Dinkin's words, but their meaning was clear. Get up, we don't have time for this. The woman rose to her feet. Her gaze slid over Perry. Is this him? Is he the one? Not to hear him tell it, Dinkin said. She switched languages for her next question. Dinkin stuck to English. Only one way to find out, she said. We'll follow you. Okay, that's a little selection from my book. Should be out March of next year. And thanks for listening.
Awesome. So yes, that was pretty dope. I guess maybe we have time for a little bit of a Q&A. But while I set that up, I'm going to play one more track from Savan DePaul and show a couple of more slides from Kara Imshinda, and we will be right back in a few minutes. Thank you very much. All right, beaming back in. What's up? If I could get Alex J, Savan, and Kara to beam back in for this quick Q&A. How are you guys feeling?
Good, good.
All right.
Solid.
Yeah. So, I'll start with Savan really quick. What was some of the inspiration behind the sounds, particularly on the second song? I love how it builds and then it sort of breaks down. I guess it was the live instrumentation. What was the ideas behind that?
This was a lot of the instrumentals that I had built up. A lot of this stuff has been kind of slow brewing over the past 4 years or so, and a lot of it is more. I say the vast majority of the beats that I've made over the past few years have been made with a specific Afrofuturist queer lens through them. It was a lot of like part of like a self-discovery journey, you know. And then me, linking together like samples and instrumentation, like actual instruments and things like that, in order to like express what I was feeling at the time. A lot of like evolving song structures and stuff like that, in order to symbolize, what I was going through, the growth that I was experiencing.
Is there a certain freedom that live instruments give you that samples or like digital workspaces don't?
In some ways, yes, because I utilize a lot of my kalimba throughout some of this stuff.
Awesome.
And then also string samples and air who's like a 2-stringed fiddle for some of the sounds, and then manipulating them, with effects and stuff like that.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's it's really cool in order to like bend those sounds using my own 2 fingers, whatever. But in other ways, it's cool to reimagine samples into some crazy new context.
Awesome. And you have 2 personas for your work right now. Is it the Ishtar persona, and you also go by your name Savan? Is there something that separates the 2, or is it just like whatever you're feeling at the moment gets kind of allocated?
I guess at this point, the only real distinctions are what I do on them. I originally was going to separate them, kind of being like, Savan the Paul, my rap stuff, just being more like personal, like you're not personal, but Savan the Paul being the more kind of like wide ranging, looking at the bigger systems like that, and Ishtar Senior kind of being more personal, focused on like love balladry and like personal that stuff. But at this point, it's really like Savan the Paul is just like the rap stuff. Ishtar Senior is just the singing stuff, that's solely singing stuff, and then everything else is Savan the Paul at this point.
Radical. Yeah. What do you have coming up next?
A lot of collaborative albums. I had one with Danae. We've been working on. We just finished a trailer for it because we're trying to do a visual, like a visual film for the album. But it's typically an Afrofuturist kind of Black liberation, queer liberation rap album. It's called Free Spirits, and it's aiming for September for that to drop. So.
Oh, that's what's up. Yeah. Can a brother get a verse on that, John? Can I do a little guest poem or something? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I would love to work with you, but for sure. But like, that sounds really awesome. Yeah. If you want to drop any relevant links in the chat, and Gina, if you could post them to the YouTube, that'd be awesome. So thanks for beaming in to the Ambitron and spacing this out a little bit.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And Alex J, what's up? That was an awesome story, first of all. I think you're muted still, Alex. Awesome.
Yeah, I am. Thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, beforehand when we were discussing what you were going to do, I mentioned Lovecraft Country. And although you did not quite bristle, you were like, you mentioned other influences for you. What is it about being Black and experiencing kind of like horror and speculative fiction that attracts you to write about that? And what are some of your influences that led to writing this style?
Well, I have nothing against Lovecraft Country, but
Yeah.
it's not quite the same vein as what I'm doing. I'd say it's more redolent of like Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark. Like I love the work that he's doing. Some of my influences range from Octavia Butler to Nisi Shaw to there are just so many. Ursula Le Guin.
Yeah.
And even outside the business, my own father. And I kind of like to throw everything together and just watch to see what comes out.
Did you grow up reading sci-fi, or was there another avenue that led you into this? Like, did you read like Heinlein and Asimov and all those guys?
Yes, I did actually. I first, like, my father started out reading fantasy novels to me and my little brother when we were kids. But then when I was 12, we moved to Paramaribo, Suriname, because my dad worked for the State Department. And the only English language library they had in town was at the community liaison office. And they just had all of these cast off science fiction paperbacks and magazines. That was where I first encountered Asimov's and FNSF and a lot of that stuff, and including Octavia's work. And I just I drifted away from that for a while during high school, and it wasn't really until I was in college at Evergreen that I started like reapproaching speculative fiction, and ever since I've been into all that.
Yeah, that's what's up. So what's the process like for and what's so your new novel, what's it called again? The one that you have?
The Ballad of Perilous Graves.
What was the process like for that as opposed to Here I Come? Not necessarily just because they're short stories, but because they're sort of stylistically different. Was there a different writing process? Did you have to get a different headspace?
There was a different writing process and a different headspace. When I first moved to New Orleans, it was the year after Katrina, and I noticed a lot of news stories about kids who were forced to come back to town without their parents and like live on their own and fend for themselves. And immediately that made me think of, the number one like parentless child that I knew of when I first started reading, and that's Pippi Longstocking. And so I immediately started thinking, well, what if Pippi was a Black girl living in Central City, New Orleans? Like, how would that change her supporting cast, the adventures that she gets into, and like who she fights against? So, I originally came up with it as a comic, and I thought it would be something that I could work on while I waited for other things to happen in my career. And in the way of such things, it became the, great work of my career so far. And so it's taken a lot more time than Here I Come and the stories that were in it. And it's taken more from the core of me personally. Because at some times it felt like the book was writing itself, but at other times, like I would be hit with the realization like so big and so profound that it made me worry that I wasn't the writer who could pull this off. And I mean, really, I wasn't. I had to grow into this, and I'm still growing into it. And it's really something special, and I'm glad that I can let it speak for me the way that it will when it comes out.
It's interesting when you talk about Pippi Longstocking being this kind of like isolationist character. There was a lot of characters like that. I think in our childhood, I guess we're about the same age in like the 80s and the 90s, where you had like the Little Prince and Belle and Sebastian, and you had all these like isolated children, sort of like latchkey kids with a key to the world. So it was like it seems like a very weird moment in time, but I guess like those like children being isolated and having to dream up their world is still a universal thing, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Radical.
Well,
All right. Yeah.
I was just going to say, you have so little control over your surroundings and what happens to you when you're small. Like the idea of having magic powers to combat things, it's comforting.
Right. For sure. Yeah. Anything else you got coming up soon?
Yeah, I have a story in Current Affairs magazine, and it's also available on currentaffairs.com. That's a sort of like very New Orleans centric, like neighborhood horror story that
Oh,
I'm
that's what's
very
up.
proud of.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And Kara, what's up?
Hi,
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, really
Thanks
good.
once
Really
again
good.
for, providing this opportunity. I've never
Absolutely.
worked with you and we've known each
Yeah,
other
yeah.
for a while.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Well, I did that one thing in your classroom, the
yes,
workshop.
that is right.
Yeah,
Yes, you
yeah,
did come
about
to my
like
class to
a
lecture.
billion
Yeah.
years ago. Yeah, which is really fun. Well, I guess that's a good place to start. You teach at Temple and you teach race identity um, within art. How are the kids feeling that these days? Like, what are our kids are this new generation coming up able to make these connections between social responsibility, art, identity, those kinds of things?
Yeah, that's a good question. It
Mm,
varies from, I
mm,
mean, each class that I've taught is different, and some of the students definitely have more visual literacy
mm,
and knowing what that is. And others are really encountering art for the first time. And when I say encountering, what I mean is, of course, art surrounds us, right? Our built environment is an example of art. Um, and there's signs and symbols also in, the cityscapes that we inhabit. But for some students, or for some individuals rather, it's really hard to kind of really stop and look at a work of art and understand what it's trying to communicate.
mm.
That there is a process that's involved. And the first one is time, is just taking some time to, look at, a work of art, and also to find out about the artist. So in the course that I teach, I'm not the only one who teaches it. I'm part of um, a faculty like group of maybe like 5 or 6 that teaches this course. It's a general education course. And so I was saying that some of the students haven't had that, haven't been able to like really critically analyze artwork. And so, yeah, some of them were able to, at the end of the semester, to make some connections between the impact that art has on race, identity, that can include gender, social class, for example. And so, yeah, it's a really fun class to teach, and it informs a lot of like some of the work that I do with collage.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And although you have been using figures lately
Right.
in your art,
Mhm.
you're essentially an abstract artist.
Yes.
What led you? Because we had talked about this a little bit around the time of that workshop, where we talked about how basically Black people need to get into some abstract art a little bit, and like how was that process for you? What led you to include figures amongst the abstract images?
Yeah, I kind of feel a little out of my element right now because I am doing a lot of collage work that is very
Mm,
figurative.
mm.
And but how I got into it is I'm part of an art collective called Philadelphia Collage Works.
Oh well.
And we've been in existence for about 2 years. And we kind of random people one day got together at In Liquid in May of 2019
Mm.
to celebrate something called World Collage Day. And I took my daughter Dara with me, and I met all
Yay,
these great
Dora.
collagists. Yeah, and it was just something that we were at the Crane Arts Building. So shout out to them. And so over the next, like, the 2 years that we've been, basically collaborating together, we had this project come up, and where we were doing monochromatic collages based on the rainbow. And then that morphed into the rainbow being significant of pride, right? And of queer identity, and also Black Lives Matter, and other Brown and Black communities. And so we had this project where we created collages, each of those colors in the pride flag. And I got stuck one day because I was like monochromatic. I was really having, problems, just composing something. And then one of the members was like, you have an orange wall behind you with all these, different artworks on it. It doesn't have to necessarily be monochromatic, just like color can be the main element. And so I started, I wanted to make sure that in my collages, I was centering Blackness, also Black femme identity. And so I intentionally used images of people who appear feminine. But there's a couple, there's a collage I did with Idris Elba in it. But and so that's how I kind of started into experimenting with more like figurative, elements in the collage work.
Looks fantastic.
Yeah, and right now I'm focusing on hands a lot, hands and face. I've been doing a series of collages that really kind of explores just the nature of the human hands. And when I say nature, I mean, it's something that's part of us that is so very unique, right? And, hands can hold, hands can praise, hands can clap, they can do so many things. And also hands are sensual. And so, I've been doing work on that. So
awesome. And what's next for you? Do you have any exhibitions coming up or anything?
Yeah, I do. I'm part of a group exhibition, and another group I'm in called Tiger Strikes Asteroid. And we're doing a group show in Chicago, Mana Contemporary Chicago's. And it's like the first exhibition where all the members of this collective have, are showing together. And later in July, I'm part of another group show at the William Way LGBT Community Center. It's me along with 2 other artists who basically, we were in a previous exhibition at the beginning of the year. And so the 3 of us will be showing together.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, my friends. It was really awesome. I appreciate you being sort of like the guinea pig cyborgs, the prototypes for the future Ambitrons. Once this world has been reduced to ash and flowers and the tigers and the jellyfish have taken over, they'll find this time capsule and they'll be like, yo, that first Ambitron was lit. I'm assuming that Ambitron number 300 will have a giant life-size hologram of Prince. But right now we're sticking with Zoom, and I appreciate y'all being very patient with all the weirdness and supplying us with awesome sights and sounds. Okay, so
thank you, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're gonna leave everybody's contact in the chat, and we are going to beam out of here. Thank you. I'm gonna play one track from Savon DePaul, and then we're gonna roll as everyone leaves. Thank you very much. Rock and roll. Enjoy your night.
You caught me floating away. I was interstellar, hoping